Welcome to Hot Topics. How are you today, Andy?
Really good, Phil. Yeah, feeling
Excellent.
excited and ready.
That's
Feeling
excellent.
motivated.
We're going to talk about a couple of things, I think, today, aren't we? Codename red flags and new kit for a new year. And we're going to kick off with red flags, I think. And this was something that came out of a conversation, or two or three conversations we've actually had in recent weeks about the magic of red flags and how our organizations and how our colleagues respond to them and what's appropriate. So just kick off with a bit of context for us.
Yeah, I think to keep it non-clinical, we'll try and keep it non-clinical, which is our podcast all about. So if you want a clinical red flag, go and we can advise some others. But when we mean by this, I think the thing for us is that there's two elements of this. I think part one is, what does our body language, because we are humans, if therapists are a human interaction, that's what we do.
Are all therapists human?
Well,
there's a bigger
don't question. Know. That's definitely a discussion from there. But if it's a human interaction, either we're doing this via, face to face, or if we're doing it via video consult, which we know some therapists still are. Okay, then a lot of it is a human. So one of the instances that definitely we raised and we talked about quite at length last week was, one of our owners, basically one of their staff had their first real true red flag worry. Okay. And they, in my opinion, dealt with it really well from a clinical perspective. The problem was, as a human, their body language was they were obviously quite emotionally distraught, I think is probably the right thing, because it was the first one they'd seen, and especially in a private practice setting where they haven't got as much support if you're in an NHS pathway. Okay. And so I think then it came back to what we were discussing as a leader. How do we then help with these individuals? How do we help them, coach them dealing with these situations? Because I think we go through university lives, and this was, the particular physio was quite a new physiotherapist into, to the journey anyway. So it was their first main encounter. These are things which I think red flag pathways are very well covered in the university. And I think lots of organizations, including us, have the internal process of a red flag pathways. But there's still something emotionally, isn't there, as a human, when you first come across this, there's something inside of us that makes us react. And, one of the things is, unfortunately, and we all know if you've watched these podcasts long enough, and if you've ever known me well enough, that I'm really bad liar on the basis my facial expressions probably give me away. So it's my body language tells a lot of things. And I think in this particular case, the body language gave away that the therapist in question was actually quite concerned. And that obviously then came across into the client, which then led to a conversation. So I think for me, it's just an awareness point from a leadership perspective of what do we need to do to help our own team get over stuff like that? Or how do we train our staff on controlling their emotions and their body language when we're in situations like that? Because I see an awful lot of a lot of physio organizations really quite keen now to be training their staff, which I think is brilliant. And, we're going to go on to talk about learning development. But I also see them talking an awful lot around the clinical pathways. And I think what we also forget is that as humans, we've got other elements to us rather than just doing the right thing for the patient. We've also got to be thinking about internally, how are we dealing with things and how are we coping with it emotionally? So there's something in that for me where if you have a business and you are looking to train your staff and you have got hopefully you have these pathways and internal processes of what should be happening, if, where would you refer them on to and how would you do that? But secondly, how are you training your staff to cope with that? And how are you almost, if they have had something quite severe and sincere, I've been unfortunate to come across some, happen to be at the end of you diagnose somebody with something which is, has turned out to be cancers and things. You having that assessment for the first time and going through that process and then having to find that out along the way and then manage that patient, along their journey can be quite hard and emotionally. And I think it's important that we do. And my challenge, and I'd love to hear from you guys listening to this, is how many of you think like that? How many of you are offering that as a support? How many are you kind of, what's it, debriefing? Is it afterwards, those kind of things to help the therapist almost come down emotionally as well?
Yeah, I think you did right. And to me, it's transferable. That anxiety is transferable into so many aspects of life, isn't it? But we could go very wide, but in business, I suppose if you think about recruiting a new member of the team for the first time, if you think about having to take disciplinary action against a member of the team for the first time, you think about dismissing somebody for the first time, to me, it would have the same level of impact as kind of, that's the piece around belief, really. Obviously everybody on the listeners or regular listeners know that I don't have a background as a therapist. I would think if I've got so I understand what a red flag is, and it's a series of markers, isn't it, that would give you some kind of indication that something may not be right.
Correct.
Now, new red flags potentially that you've not come across in your working life, and you suddenly get one of these, and suddenly you think, oh, am I right? What happens if I tell somebody, share some information with somebody that ends up not to be correct? What am I going to do? So it's perhaps putting yourself as that more experienced practitioner, clinician into those shoes to think, if I came across a red flag that I'd not come across before, how confident would I be in terms of my own diagnosis, and then how I would project myself in the way that you talked about in terms of giving body language away, but then how also might I be talking to the client about the options? Where would I refer within my organization to get some help and support? Because there's always the opportunity, or hopefully there's always the opportunity to say, could I just take a moment? Just rest there a minute, and then you kind of, I'm just going to go out of the room for a second. And they go, woo, help somebody tell me what I need to do. Or maybe there isn't, and in which case, what contingency do you have in place? So it's a really important aspect to be thinking about.
And I think, that all these opportunities, as much as they are hard to go through, create a learning and development opportunity as well, don't they?
They do, and it's whether or not it's the importance of seeing that they are development opportunities, rather than somebody getting something wrong, or you fearing that because you don't know in some way that you're inadequate. So what you better do is cover it up, cover it over. Maybe not even diagnose the red flag, because you think, oof, if I get it wrong, the consequences are too strong. So I'll kind of ignore it or let it go and see if it's still there next time, or whatever. And obviously that's not good customer client service. It's not great brand reputation for your clinic. And actually, in terms of developing the capacity and capability of you and your team, it's also a missed opportunity.
No, certainly. And I think that's that, we raise it with the point, don't we, that, we know these things are going on. And, let's hope that in your clinic, in your businesses, that to the listeners, that they may have had these and they may have learned from them. But what are you doing to put in place and being proactive with your team? Or what are you doing post? So if you have had somebody who's had one, what are you then learning from this? And how do you, because all of these things are learning opportunities, aren't they? And
absolutely.
I generally think that most therapists go in with the right intention, that they're doing what they think is right at the time. And, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? If we could all, I always said that it'd be great, wouldn't it? We just needed DeLorean and the doc to help us, and we could go back in time. And if we know now what with, if we can take the information we've got now and and use it in a different life, it would be really, really helpful, but we can't. So we've got to learn from opportunities that we get. And I think for us, it's about one, being proactive and thinking about not just the pathway, but also how we can help people if they do want to see it, so we can be proactive. But also, how do we take these experiences and turn them into a learning development, and not a, what you would call, not a finger pointy blame culture, because then people will just totally not do it. If everyone sees, if there's a handheld, look, this has happened, you know, and I think as a leader as well, we should take the opportunity to say, what does the business, not just what the therapist needs to do better, but what can the business do better? What is it in the internal processes that we've not got right? So if someone didn't know what to do, then actually it's not their fault. It should be you as a leader, because you've not explained to them well enough what they could do better. So I think for me that there's a really big learning for anyone listening out there. And hopefully if you haven't got this in place, then it's a good time to start now, really, to help develop.
We'll be talking about that further, and there's resources on the Academy site for anybody that's interested. But that kind of links us on that L&D theme, though, Andy, to kind of new year, new toys, new products, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the learning and development aspect of that. So we've been talking to a number of clients who are looking at their business plans for the year, and they're thinking, oh, maybe we should go and spend a bit of money or get a grant to get a new shiny piece of kit. And I know that's something that you and I also talk about, and you're quite passionate about, you know, that nice shiny bit of kit that costs a load of money, and the return on investment is pretty weak, and it collects dust in the corner because nobody quite knows what to do with it. So that's the L&D angle here, isn't it? Please develop a theme for us.
Yes, certainly. And I think that's it, isn't it? You know, but it's only, we raise this on the question being is when people ask us that question, our response is normally, okay, so what are you going to use it for? How's it going to fit into your customer experience? Is it needed? How many customers do you need to pay for it? Is the demand of that? Does the customers demand it? Have you got the right clientele for it? And if you are going to get it, who's going to train the staff so everyone does it in the way you want it to be done?
Yeah. Sounds simple, doesn't it?
Yeah. You know, it's like, and most people go, oof, didn't think about all that. And you're thinking, well, look, you know,
but I've got to get the money, but I've got to get the money spent before Christmas.
Well, or everyone else is getting one of these, so I think I should get one because I need to keep up with the trend.
Yeah.
And for me, look, technology can be brilliant, and as you know, and listeners might know, you know, we've got some cool kit in our clinics. It's something that, you know, we've invested in, and we want to keep up to date with stuff that we've got. So we've always been very much, hopefully, at the forefront of what therapy is, even though it keeps going around in circles. Of what we need.
Bit like life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it cycles and fashion and stuff. Everyone comes in. But there's really big things to, and we use this, don't we? Because one of the things that we both hate to see is people that invest in, and we're talking a lot of money. You know, some of this kit can be up to £25,000. So, you know, for a therapy business, that's a big chunk of revenue that is invested in. And that might be from grants, it might be from loans, it might be whatever it is. But still, like you said, you don't want a shiny piece of kit sat in the corner, not being used. Or we get people in who are afraid to use it. Or
worse still, I guess you've got a nice shiny piece of kit that people aren't using properly or don't know how to use properly.
Exactly. So, or patients don't understand why they're getting used, or, you know, in some cases being charged more for if they don't know how to use it. So I think we raise this point on that look, if you are considering in the next 12 months investing in some new pieces of kit, then the questions that you need to ask yourself is, one, why are you bringing it in? How is it going to improve the service that you're already delivering? Two, how are you going to, I'm going to drop it in quick before, how are you going to get return on it? So how is it going to pay for itself? Because, you know, and I think that's important. I think, how are you then going to get all of your team motivated, involved in it? Because it's all right, you as a leader and a business owner getting really excited about this piece of kit, but is that excitement still across all of the team? Does everyone think of it, or do they just roll their eyes and going, oh, look, he's bought the latest piece of kit, you know, because he wants to be cool? Then you then don't provide a consistent service across. And that's the other thing, isn't it? You know, if you've got to be able to think, how can this piece of kit be consistently used so every patient gets the same thing? Because there's nothing worse if, in my opinion, two friends come for an experience, let's use Shockwave, for example. One comes in with an Achilles and gets some exercise and sent out. The other one gets Shockwave and some exercise and gets sent out. There's a perceived value difference, isn't there?
There is.
So again, you've got to be thinking about, as a whole customer experience, customer service consistency issue, how's that going to work within your practice? And then how are you going to market that? Have you even got the target market? Is the piece of kit that you're doing, is it going to be suitable for your target market? Because that's the other thing, isn't it? There's no point if you're,
because in a number of instances we found actually that your target markets are completely different. So actually you could end up spending the money and then use a piece of kit once a week, or you could be using it, 8 hours a day.
Which also means then, if you're going to if you're getting it to attract a new market, have you then put the marketing strategy in place, and you've thought about the budget to create that marketing strategy to bring that clientele in? So there's a lot to consider, I think, with just, not just buying a fancy piece of kit and you think, oh, this is cool, and because everyone else has got one. There's a lot that goes behind that. And I think for us, we shine this on because, unfortunately, we get into lots of conversations with people that haven't really considered these things. They haven't thought it all the way through, and then it can cause problems in the long run. So we just want to highlight that, don't we? And I think, like you've said, it's a great learning development piece of work, that if you are going to do this, then what do you need to be proactive about, and continually, how do you need to keep motivating your staff along the way? And
we'll be talking more about this as we
we've got some good webinars coming up as well, haven't we?
Look on, check into Eventbrite. Make sure that you're following us on Eventbrite to hear what's coming up, because we've got three or four webinars now on the stocks or coming to fruition. So we'll be through until April and beyond in that regard. So all good, I think, Andy.
Yeah, and as always, if there's anything you want to hear, let us know. So please reach out to us, please comment. We always want to know. If you're watching this on YouTube, then make sure you're liking the YouTube channel. If you're listening to this on any of your kind of podcast things, then please feel free to rate us. We always want to know. And any feedback you've got, then please do reach out, info@elevateyourclinic.com, or message us on our social media.
Perfect. So Andy, until next time.
Cheers, Phil. As always, lovely. See you next time.
Yeah.